Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. We'll begin Daf Ayin Vav Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. We learned in the Mishnah that there were 5 sayings, 5 dvorim that come with tumah, that you're makder with tumah, but they're not nechal with tumah. Korbanos, which are korbanos tzibur, which are kavuas man, even though normally korbanos are not brought with tumah, but these are brought with tumah, but nevertheless they're not eaten with tumah. And the Mishnah listed 5 cases. Frankly, Gemara, well, why didn't it include also the musafim, the seirim of the regalim of the Yom Tovim, which are also karbonos, tzibur kavulem zman? So why wasn't that listed in the Mishnah? Our answer is yes, but it does say a category of zivche shalmei tzibur, so that we can learn out from there that just like over there it's daiche, here also it should be daiche, so we can learn out from there. Now, even though that's zivche shalmei tzibur, but we can learn out that if it's a korban tzibur, since it's a korban tzibur, that's kavulem zman, so we can learn out similarly for the sirei haragolim. If that's so, well, Sirei Chadoshim, Nami Loi Nisne, well, why does the Tana have to mention Sirei Chadoshim? Also, say you learn it out, you can learn it out from the Zivchei Shalmei Tzibur. So why was it have to mention this separately? And that Tana Zivchei Shalmei Tzibur? The Gemara answers, Sirei Rosh Chadoshim Etzrichle. No, it's needed to tell us Sirei Rosh Chadoshim. It's necessary because the Torah never calls it specifically as a moed. When the Torah says that these are the Mordei Hashem, Parshas Emor, but the Rosh Chodesh is not in that list, so it's never specifically referred to as a moed. So therefore, since it doesn't say a moed, I might think it's not doiche. So I might have said Salkadaitech Amina Halaksiva Mayid, so therefore Kamashalan, the Rosh Chodesh Ikar Mayid. So that's why the Tana has to tell me that Rosh Chodesh is called a Mayid. And that's why he has to mention it separately to teach me this Chodesh that it is called a Mayid. Well, that's fine, but if that's the case, then just mention that, and then you don't have to mention the other ones. And you don't have to mention Zivchashal Beit Tzibur. Just mention the case of the Sirei Rosh Chadoshim. Tosfos leaves it without an answer. So on Kol Panim, therefore we have to tell us this Chiddush that Rosh Chodesh is also called a Moed, and therefore it's Deiche de Tumah. Kirabai, where do we see that it's called a Moed? The Omra Baya Tammuz Dai Shatam Eloya Malyu. The Tammuz of that year, the year that the Meraglim were sent, and they returned, so they were sent at the 29th day of Sivan. They returned 40 days later, and they cried about the Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, and there was a Bechi, and it was a Bechi Le'olam, and that was on Tisha B'Av. How does it work out on Tisha B'Av? It works out on Tisha B'Av because they made the Sivan of that year a Chodesh Molei. They added a day to it. And therefore, when you include that and add that day, therefore the Bechi was on Tisha B'Av. So, Tammuz Dai Shata Meloi Mali, T'chsiv Korlai Moed Lishbar Bachurai. Because the Pasuk says that Hashem made a Moed in order to Lishbar, to break, to crush Bachurai, the young man. So he made a Moed, he added to Rosh Chodesh, the Moed, he added an extra day of Sivan, meaning that there was 2 days of Chodesh Molei, so there was 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, there was the 30th day of Sivan and the first day of Tammuz. There was an added day to Rosh Chodesh, to Moed, to bring this calamity on Tisha B'Av. Therefore, the Tana included to learn out that we should know that it is called, a Moed is called, therefore, in the category of Korban Tzibur, that it's Deiche de Tumah. For Tosfos, well, in Parshas Pinchas, it lists all the Korbanos, and it does list Rosh Chodesh, and it says at the end of the Parsha, Eila Tasu B'Moedeichem. So why wouldn't we think that Moed is referring to Rosh Chodesh? So Tosha says that no, we would have thought it's referring the moed that it says that Tasu b'moedechem is referring to the regalim, not Rosh Chodesh. Just like it also the parsha that also Shabbos is also mentioned, and the Talmud is mentioned, and it's not referring to Shabbos and the Talmud, and so therefore, since Rosh Chodesh is not separately, independently called as a moed, I would think therefore that it's not referring to Rosh Chodesh either. So Kamash Malan, that's why the Tana is teaching us about Rosh Chodesh. So the Memra, the Kula Mimayet also. It comes to teach us, so we learn therefore that in all cases that we say that it's Deichet Tuma, it's from the fact that the Torah says Mayet. The Mayet at an appointed time, a specific time, and that time even if the Tzibur is Tomei. And how do we know this? The Tana Rabbon by Daber Moshe es Mayadei Hashem. The pasuk says that Moshe is told over and the Moedim of Hashem Matam Loimar Lafi Shaloi Lamanu Latam Pesach. We only know that Talmud and Pesach is Bo B'Tuma. We would only know that because how do we know that? Shenemrabu b'moadoi. It says b'moadoi in its appointed time. Whenever that time comes, b'moadoi. So we know by the Korban Talmud and the Korban Pesach that it's Bo B'Tuma. Shar Korbanos Tzibur Minayin. How do I know other Korbanos Tzibur? Shenemar. It says in Parshas Pinchas, Elo Tasu L'Hashem B'Moadeichem. These are what you should do in your appointed time B'Moadeichem. So other ones, Korbanos Tzibur, also come B'Tuma. How do I know that it includes the Korban Omer and the Korban Mincha, the Omer, and the Zvachim that come with it, and Shtei HaLechem v'Karav Imai, and also the two loaves, the Shtei HaLechem Meshuas, and the Zvachim that come with them? How do I know that as well? Talmud Loimer by Davar Moshe es Moed Hashem al Bnei Yisrael. So we said this posik by Davar Moshe es Moed Hashem al Bnei Yisrael to include a kosa kava moed echad lekulam. They're all considered one moed, and it's all considered one moed and is common. Therefore, we learn out that in all these cases that it is Deichet Tuma. Why do I need all of these cases? Why do I need all of these psukim to be marb? All of these cases. The Gemara says we need it. Because of one Talmud, if it only wrote the Talmud, Hava Mina Talmud, Shekain Torah Kol. Why is the Talmud Deichet Tuma? Because that is that Maila that it comes every day. It's told it, and also it's called it's completely consumed. It's completely burnt on the mizbeach. Aval Pesach loy, but Pesach is not todir. Only comes Pesach time, and it's not totally consumed on the mizbeach. The basar is eaten. Kamash Malan, also the Pesach is the Navi Kosavrak Mana. If it says only Pesach, I would thought Pesach Shimon Chorus. Pesach has that mile, that chumrah, that by not bringing the Korban Pesach, if one violates that, the Einish is Chorus. Aval Talmud then it honors Chorus, Emaloi. But the Talmud does not have that chumrah, Kamash Malan. That's why it teaches me also by the Talmud. So I have to write it both by the Talmud and the Pesach. And if it only said these two cases, I would have said, well, in both of these cases, there's a tzad chomer. Each one has its own chumrah. Talmud, Talmud v'kol. The Korban Talmud has the chumrah that it's Talmud v'kol. Pesach, Shewanish Kares. Has Pesach the chumrah of course, but I might have said Aval Shar Korbanos Tzibur Emaloi, but other Korbanos Tzibur which don't have the chumrah of being either Toder or Kol or Kores, I might have thought it's not Deichet Tuma. Therefore, Kasav Rachmana Ela Tasul Hashem b'Moadeichem. That's why it says in Parshas Pinchas b'Moadeichem to include the other ones as well. Now, because of Rahman El Tasul Hashem b'Moadeichem, I would have thought Havamina Shar Korbanos Tzibur b'Im L'Chaper. I would have thought in a Chanami that were Mara other Korbanos Tzibur, but I would have said perhaps it's only the Korbanos Tzibur that are coming L'Chaper, coming L'Kapor, to an atonement and a forgiveness, a kapara for Averas. The Musvei Regolim come L'Chaper al Tumus Mikdash L'Kadosh. But I might have said, that's not coming to be mechaper naver. The shtei lechem, the omer, they're coming to be matir. They're korbanos that are coming to be matir, not to be mechaper. They're matir the chodesh. So that's elul hatir ba'alma. That's being matir, but it's not a mechaper. So I would have thought it doesn't have that degree of severity, and it doesn't have that degree of chumah or necessity to be makrivim, and therefore I might have thought it's not boim betuma. So I might have thought where it's elul hatir ba'almaloi kamash malan, that it teaches us that even that are doichet tuma. Because if it only said those cases, I would have thought that they're brought betuma because they're matir. Aval hanach, which don't have the mila, that they're matir. Aval hanach loy kamash malan, meaning there is a tzad to say that there's a mila in the machaper, and there's a mila in the matir. So therefore, it has to write both of them, because if only one, I would perhaps attribute it to the mila of one over the other. So that's why it says in all of these cases. Now, Savrua, they thought to say, the Bnei Yeshiva thought to say, now, there's two ways of understanding that the korban is brought betuma. One is tuma d'chuy b'tzibur, that b'di'evet is brought. It's not like the iser tuma doesn't exist. In tuma iser, the tuma is still there, even though it's b'tzibur. But under certain circumstances, we will allow you to bring it nevertheless, as we'll see in a moment. The other approach is that Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Once the Tzibur is Tomei, then the Yisr of Tumah doesn't exist. So you don't need any other mitigating factors to allow the Hakrova of the Korban B'Tumah. So the assumption is that everybody, except, as we'll see momentarily, for a Das Yochid, that everybody holds that Tumah is D'chuya B'Tzibur. It's only B'Di'evet. And therefore, Ubay Yitzis L'Ratzis. And therefore, what makes it acceptable is the fact that there's a tzitz. Now we know that the tzitz, the plate that the Kohen Gadol wears on his forehead, that golden plate, the tzitz, we know that it's miras for tumah, meaning that in a case where a person brought a korban, a yochid brought a korban b'tumah where he shouldn't have, but lach harmaisa b'di'eved, it's miratza, it's mechaper. So the assumption over here is that the Tanaim hold that even b'tzibur tumah is only dechuya, and what allows the bringing of the korban. Now here we allow you to bring it. It's not only after the fact we allow you to bring it, but what allows the bringing of the korban? It's the tzitz, and if the tzitz would be broken, you would not be allowed to bring it. So that's the assumption now, is that the kuli hama tumah dechuya b'tzibur uboy tzitz l'ratzis, and it's only the existence of the tzitz that allows the akra of the korban. Because the likatana de shalmid leida omar tumah hutra b'tzibur, because the only tana that we found that says that tumah is hutra b'tzibur is the das yachid is Rabbi Yehuda. It's only Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya says ben sheyesh olam mitzcho ben shenal mitzcho meratza. That says whether the kohen gadol is wearing it or not wearing it, it's still meratza. Rabbi Shimon. That's what Rabbi Shimon says, whether he's wearing it or not. Rabbi Yehuda, he says no. If he's wearing it, it's meratz. Ein oidei al mitzcha, ein meratz. But if he's not wearing it, it's not meratz. Amrlu Rabbi Shimon, he says, I'll prove to you that that's not the case. I'll prove to you that even where he's not wearing it, that it's meratz. Because Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim yachiach. Now there's times when the Kohen Gadol is not wearing the tzitz. When he goes lefnei on Yom Kippur, he's wearing the big day lovan, and he's not wearing gold. He's not wearing the big day zahav. He does not wear the tzitz, and therefore on Yom Kippur, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim yachiach she'ein al mitzcha meratza. Now even if the tzibur is tomei, he is not wearing the tzitz, and it's still meratza. Omer loy, Rabbi Yehuda answered, no, don't bring the rye from there. He says you can't bring the rye from there because tumas hutra b'tzibur, and you don't need the tzitz. But where you do need the tzitz, he says, he has to be wearing it. Now, Rav Shimon argues on that. So therefore, Mechlad Rav Shimon Savra Tumah Dechuya B'tzibur. So it must be that Rav Shimon, who was bringing the raya from the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur, must have held not that way, and he must have held that no, that Tumah is Dechuya B'tzibur, and nevertheless, it's only Dechuya, and nevertheless, the tzitz is Maratza, even though the Kohen Gadol, when he's Nechnas L'fnayim, is not wearing the tzitz. So you see that the tzitz is Maratza, where you do need the tzitz to be Maratza, it's Maratza, even though he's not wearing it. So, therefore, assumption number one is that we're holding that Tumah is only Dechuya B'tzibur. Assumption number two, the Gemara continues, that Kuli Almein it's Maratza Al Achilas. And the further assumption is that the tzitz is not Maratza on Achilas. That the tzitz is only Maratza on that which you have to be makriv on the Mizbeach. Now, it doesn't mean to suggest that if tzitz would be Maratza on Achilas, that means that you could eat the basar of a korban that was tomei, even if you were makriv betuma. What we mean to say is that the tzitz is Maratza on that which is burnt on the Mizbeach or applied to the Mizbeach, the dam of a zebach, the kmitza of a mincha. That if it's tomei and the tzibur is tomei, that the tzitz is Maratza and therefore allows the avodah to be done, even though there's tumah. Even though there's tumah and the tzibur is tomei, but nevertheless, that which is applied to the mizbeach, the tzitz is Maratza. And therefore it's considered like a korban which is Torah insofar as you can continue on with the avodah. But it's only Maratza on that which is applied to the mizbeach. But if the basar is tomei, for instance, then the tzitz will not alleviate that issue. Now we'll see why that's negay in a moment. So the Kuli Al means it's Maratza Al Achilas, the Lekatana the Shabbat Leidamer, it's Maratza Al Achilas, El Rabbi Eliezer. Because the only Tana that we found that he says that the tzitz is Maratza on the Achilas, that which is to be eaten, is Rabbi Eliezer. The son Rabbi Eliezer, he says it's Maratza Al Achilas. He says that tzitz is Maratza Al Achilas, and Rabbi Yossi Aimer, and it's Maratza Al Achilas, then it's not. Okay, so therefore, if we assume that Tumah is Dechuya B'tzibur, and therefore, to allow that krova, you need the tzitz, and if we assume that the tzitz is not Maratza on Achilas, even where the tzitz is Maratza, it's only which is applied to the Mizbeach, based on that, you would say, therefore, Nema Masnisin Deloik Rabbi Yeshua. Then we would say, therefore, let us say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yeshua. Why is that? And the Sanya, because it says, it says that you make the oila, the meat, and the blood. Rav Shua, im ein dam ein basar. If there's no dam, if the blood is disqualified from putting on the mizbeach, then you can't burn the meat on the mizbeach either. And im ein basar, and if the basar is disqualified from the mizbeach, ein dam, you can't apply the blood to the mizbeach also. So Rabbi Yeshua says they're connected. The pasuk says, so they have to be both. They have to be both roy for the mizbeach. And if the one is not roy for the mizbeach, the other one can't be applied either. But Rabbi Eliezer says no. Dam afal pi shein basar. If the dam is suitable, even if the meat is not. Shenemar v'dam zvachecha yishafech. And here it doesn't link the two together. It just says v'dam zvachecha yishafech. So therefore, you see that they're independent. The pasuk does link it. It says the basar adam. He says to teach you something else, not that they both have to be roy for the mizbeach. The dam, if the dam is roy, you can do the avodah, even if the basar is not. So why does it link it two together? To teach you ma dam bezrika, just when you have like the dam has to be thrown on the mizbeach, basar bezrika. When you put the basar on the Mizbeach, you do it by throwing. You don't place it, you throw it. Which teaches you that the kevish, the wrap that comes up to the Mizbeach, it doesn't reach the Mizbeach, come right up to the Mizbeach. There's a small opening, so when the kohen is on the ramp, he doesn't place it, he throws it on the Mizbeach. So it's thrown on the Mizbeach. Tosfos explains it's not, strictly speaking, necessary to have that lul. The din is he has to throw it on Mizbeach, but they had that space over there, that separation, as a reminder for the kohen that he must throw it on the Mizbeach. According to Yeshua, however, he says that no, the pasuk links the two together. Now we'll see in the next year how he understands the part of the pasuk that says that part of the pasuk that doesn't link, that says v'dam zevachach yishofek, how will he understand that? But Kol Panim, Yeshua says they are linked. We do link it together, and we say if there's no basar, there's no dam. Now, if we say that tumah is only the chuyyah b'tzibur, and if we say therefore you need the tzitz to be meratzah, and if we say the tzitz is not meratzah on achilos, how could the Tana say that these korbanos are brought b'tumah? How can they be brought b'tumah? How can we say it's brought b'tumah if the tzitz is not meratzah on the achilos? That means in effect that you don't have the basar, and if you don't have the basar, then how can you be makriv the korban? So how can it be doicha? How can you be makriv if tumah is the chuyyah b'tzibur, and so you need the tzitz to be meratzah, and the tzitz is not meratzah on achilos? And if we link the two together and we say that if there's no basar, there's no dam, how can you do the avodah? So Mr. Hashem, we'll see in the next year.